Although I wasn't necessarily a fan, I've always been curious about the idea of musical groups with multiple members with different voices. Before, we used to call them boy bands and girl bands. Now bands are more associated with musical ensembles, and the terms boy group and girl group are more common. But whatever you want to call them, I was interested in these types of groups. I was especially interested in the puzzle I created in my mind for these groups. Are these members part of what appears to be a complex puzzle, a simple puzzle, a disproportionate one? Is there a piece that maybe doesn't fit? Or are they just pretending they are part of the same puzzle? Recently, I saw a clip of The Mentor that helped the British girl group Little Mix win their singing competition.
I let them be themselves, and I'd always say to them, don't do the whole, dressing up and the matchy, like just do you. What do you want to wear? Talk about the things that you're passionate about. Just be you, be authentic.
And what she said reminded me of a big idea a lot of Western girl groups and boy groups tried to go by during the 2010s, which was, we should not be manufactured. We should just be ourselves, normal boys and girls.
I was never really a fan of boy bands before.
When people say you're in a boy band, I'm like, yeah, I am, but I'm in a cool boy band.
Would you consider yourself a boy band?
No.
I don't think our music fits the description of a boy band. Like this music specifically, I don't think it fits the description of a boy band.
Our music's not as stereotypical as oh, your typical boy band.
We couldn't follow the boy band stereotypes. Choreographed dance routines and everything's the same.
They hate dancing with a passion.
There's been times when they've dressed us all in the same clothes and we're like, no, we can't do that.
Don't do the whole, dressing up and the matchy, like just do you. Just be you.
You're still a normal person.
Yeah, I still feel pretty normal.
Me too, yeah, I'm 100% still normal too.
We are really nice with each other. Yeah, we're just laid back girls.
And what I'm about to say may sound controversial at first, but please hear me out and try to understand my entire point. I think groups should not just be themselves. Authenticity and being relatable are good things for a group. But I do believe that this wave of authenticity in groups during the 2010s was some kind of coping mechanism for boy groups and girl groups to not get the reputation of the outdated groups of the 90s. I remember that there was this repulsive reaction by young singers and teenage audiences to matching outfits, choreographed dances, and the star image. This was reflected a lot in media for teenagers at the time.
Wow.
Matching outfits?
This, my friend, is hot.
This, my friend, is not.
Can't hide behind these gimmicks anymore. What good is it to get famous if nobody knows who I really am?
This is show business.
Wow, impressive.
I know, right? It's kind of my thing. It's a tough business.
Narcissistic, overproduced ego factory.
Welcome to the ego factory.
Wow. Good luck trying to find a spotlight big enough for the both of you.
This feeling's like no other.
You want to hear how the duet's supposed to sound?
That knows me like you do.
I'm talking massive dance number. 100 dancers, fireworks, the lot. Dance is just so hot right now.
We'd never do that.
Absolutely not.
We'd never wear that.
Ta-da!
Now this was of course in the Western music market, because in K-pop, appearing as normal was not a priority at all. The matching outfits, the flashy music videos, and the synchronized choreographies were the priority. Just thinking about the fact that certain K-pop groups and Western groups were active during the same time is crazy to me, because they were part of very different waves of groups. K-pop groups try to present themselves as superstars. That's why they are not even called K-pop singers, they are called K-pop idols. While Western groups try to present themselves as the complete opposite, just normal people, just the girl or the boy next door. Now, this sounds great. Singers are not superheroes, they are just people. However, I do believe this strategy created an acceptance for artistic mediocrity and disorder in musical groups. I believe this started to become really obvious to me when One Direction started to replace professional photo shoots for their album covers with random and, I'm sorry, ugly pictures. How did they manage to make 5 conventionally attractive men look bad in a heavily promoted album cover? I have no idea, but they did it. These were their official images, used not only on album covers, but they were also sent everywhere for promotions. This was how they chose to present themselves. Their performance stages also became less and less dynamic and professional looking as they were going harder with this idea of we just want to be ourselves. Like they said in their movie, This Is Us. We physically cannot make ourselves match or look cohesive as a group. Now, I believe the final big and ultimate example of a group victim of this individuality over the look of the group mentality is Fifth Harmony. On red carpets, album covers, concerts, and performances, each member was doing their own thing. Which is funny because it seemed like they were at least trying to put on a cohesive show. Unfortunately, they were not doing their own thing while still making sense, like the Spice Girls who each had their own character. Let's remember that during the 90s and early 2000s, girl groups and boy groups followed individual tropes and archetypes but were still cohesive. The matching outfits and the choreographed dances helped create this image, but like I said, over the years this started to look too manufactured, and the complete opposite became the trend. And it really was the trend. Once One Direction broke up in December of 2015, so many boy bands started to get heavily promoted, and there was a very obvious new look. Vibing more than synchronized dancing, regular mismatching outfits, and sometimes even one sole guitar player. It was very specific. That was until a certain Korean group made their American debut at the 2017 American Music Awards. That was BTS. And BTS did not only successfully break into both the Western and K-pop industries, but they also changed what it means to be a group today. BTS managed to become the biggest group in both the Western industry and the K-pop industry, although they were the complete opposite of each other. Because they were the opposite of each other, there wasn't really any real crossover between these industries before them. A group was either the most popular in one industry or the other, not in both. So the question is, how did BTS do this? A lot of it simply has to do with the inevitable circumstances of BTS's debut. BTS had their debut in the K-pop industry in 2013, and just like the entirety of K-pop at the time, they were not even thinking of trying to seriously promote in the West. Previous attempts of K-pop in the Western music industry failed. Starting in 2008, when Rain appeared at the Stephen Colbert Show and Big Bang released an English language album. Then in 2009, Wonder Girls released a song in English, performed at the Wendy Williams Show, had a bunch of interviews in America, and they opened for the Jonas Brothers in their North American tour. In 2011, Girls' Generation released an album with an American label and a European label. They released a song in English and promoted it on an American morning show and the David Letterman Show. And obviously in 2012, Psy released Gangnam Style, which coincidentally became viral in the West as well. This created a lot of firsts in the K-pop industry. The first to perform in an American TV show, the first to release an English language album, the first. But these artists, including Psy, did not go further in this particular industry. They were not really able to integrate themselves in the Western music industry and create a Western following. So all of these massive K-pop artists went back to prioritizing and ruling the K-pop industry. No more American labels involved. No more American interviews and TV performances, and the rest of K-pop stopped trying as well. Like I said, this is in part because this image was outdated in the West. Around 2010, K-pop groups look like Western groups from the 90s, especially when you put them next to One Direction or Fifth Harmony, the Western groups that were their contemporaries. So when Western groups and their normal image were at their peak, BTS debuted. As a K-pop group, they were expected to perform on K-pop music shows, promote in variety shows, and present themselves as superstars, but their label didn't have the money or power to get them these opportunities, forcing them to promote mostly online. Now, this sounds crazy, but it's true. BTS were the only ones in the K-pop industry to promote mainly on social media. Before BTS, K-pop groups did not care about behind-the-scenes blogs, video diaries, or social media interaction. They were idols, and appearing as normal kids on the internet did not help create that image. But BTS had to promote online. When they started doing this, Western groups were at their peak, so BTS were slowly and silently growing online. But once One Direction broke up and Camila Cabello left Fifth Harmony, the downfall of relatable Western groups started. And among the many relatable groups trying to become the next big thing, BTS stood out. Because yes, they were normal guys sharing their songs on SoundCloud and directly talking to fans on social media, but they were not mediocre performers. BTS stood out as more professional, more organized. They were the only group in the Western music industry actually putting on a show. And after years of celebrating mediocrity, BTS were a breath of fresh air. The circumstances in which BTS rose to global fame were not all luck. Yes, the absence of a main group in 2016 and 2017 helped BTS be seen, but this visibility was applied to so many groups as well. And Western labels were the ones pushing all these groups at the same time. Meanwhile, the K-pop industry was, as always, ruled by the non-relatable idol groups, mainly part of the big three. What made BTS stand out, in my opinion, was the perfect balance. The idea of the manufacturer group was outdated in 2010, in 2016, and it still is today. But if you came across BTS in 2016 or 2017, you saw both their normal, relatable, and more personal content and their undeniable talent in show-stopping performances. BTS did a little more than what everyone else was doing. That made them unstoppable. And that is why I have a problem with this motto by Western producers of groups of just be yourself. The wave of Western groups in the 2010s was iconic, but it was an artistic mess. Meanwhile, K-pop during the 2010s was an artistic exploration that was hard to appreciate and get attached to without the beautiful, over-the-top visuals. BTS normalized attempting to balance both. Not just be yourself, not just be a star. Be complicated and multifaceted. BTS changed the group scene completely. Synchronized choreographies and matching outfits are back and actually to a higher standard than they were during the 90s. But K-pop groups have to balance this with relatability. So only after BTS became the biggest group in the world, every K-pop group opened Twitter accounts, started doing blogs on YouTube, etc. But just like BTS, they may need the absence of the biggest. So after 6 years of being the undeniable biggest group, BTS had to go in an inevitable rest from group activities because they had to go to the military. That left other groups, K-pop or Western, about 3 years to climb to the top. Unfortunately for them, that time is basically over. And during these years, the overall popularity of groups has actually declined. Although the industry is clearly desperate to find the next big group, and they are giving them a variety of platforms previous generations of groups never had, none of them could come close to BTS's numbers and impact while on hiatus. Like we saw in 2016 and 2017, the absence of the biggest is an opportunity to be seen. But without innovation or something different, anything different, what audiences see is a bunch of the same, and the next big group cannot organically be chosen in a space like this. Again, I blame the producers. The era of the Just Be Yourself groups was short-lived and had messy endings, so those groups and their producers are not relevant anymore. But the K-pop producers with their star image have this obsession with manufacturing everything. It's the label's projects and their decisions and their visions. Even when trying to create K-pop or non-K-pop groups that balance both being relatable and professional like BTS, they still fail to truly let the artists do something artistic on their own. They are too selfish or too scared to attempt a real balance. The wave of groups from the 2020s lacks real, raw human emotion and personality. They learned nothing from BTS because it was their lack of control from the industry what made them creative. So the early 2020s was an interesting era for girl groups and boy groups, but I'm honestly way more excited for the ways in which BTS is planning to change the industry again very soon.